The morning my wife decided to destroy my life started like any other Tuesday in Sycamore Heights, with the sound of her taking selfies for Instagram while I made coffee she'd never drink. "Dave, you're in my shot!" Marissa snapped, adjusting her ring light for the 15th time. "This is for my wellness brand partnership." I stepped aside, watching my wife of 16 years pose with a green smoothie she'd dumped down the sink the moment she got her content. At 37, Marissa had perfected the art of looking effortlessly beautiful while putting in maximum effort. Her blonde highlights were fresh, her yoga pants cost more than my weekly paycheck, and her smile could sell ice to Eskimos, which, coincidentally, was basically her job as a social media influencer. "Don't forget Zoe has soccer practice at 4, I said, pouring my coffee into a chipped mug that read, "World's Okayest Dad," a gag gift from our 15-year-old daughter that had become depressingly accurate. Can't. I'm meeting Kendra and Lisa for lunch. Then we're checking out that new spa in Millbrook. Marissa didn't look up from her phone screen. Besides, you're better at the supportive parent thing. The supportive parent thing. Right. Because working nights as a security guard at the industrial complex downtown apparently made me the designated chauffeur and cheerleader. Not that I minded. Zoe was the one good thing to come out of this marriage, and unlike her mother, she actually seemed to enjoy my company. "Your smoothie's separating," I pointed out. "Shit." Marissa grabbed the glass and gave it a theatrical stir. "Okay, take 2. And Dave, could you maybe not hover? You're giving off depressed energy." Depressed energy. I'd been a journalist once, back when newspapers still existed, and I had dreams bigger than monitoring empty warehouses for minimum wage plus benefits. But the industry collapsed. Marissa's influencer income kept us afloat, and somehow I'd become the family disappointment without anyone officially announcing it. My phone buzzed. A text from Pete, my only remaining friend and the IT guy who kept the security company's ancient computer system running. "Coffee later. I've got gossip about your neighborhood." I typed back, "Always. Need something to distract me from my perfect life." "Perfect life?" Marissa had been reading over my shoulder. "You could try being grateful, Dave. Do you know how many women would kill to live in Sycamore Heights?" Probably the same number who'd kill to escape it, I thought, but kept that observation to myself. Our gated community was the kind of place where everyone drove luxury SUVs, attended HOA meetings religiously, and measured their worth in square footage and school district rankings. The houses were beautiful, the lawns were immaculate, and the people were slowly going insane from the pressure to maintain appearances. "Speaking of which," Marissa continued, "my brother's moving back to town next week. He's going to stay with us while he gets settled." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Your brother? Brad?" "It's just temporary. A few weeks, maybe a month." Brad Bear. Hewitt was Marissa's older brother and everything I wasn't. 6'3", built like a linebacker, owner of 3 successful gyms, and possessed of the kind of aggressive confidence that made other men either worship him or want to punch him in the face. I fell firmly into the second category. "What happened to his place in Denver?" I asked. "Business expansion. He's opening a new gym here and needs to scout locations." Marissa's voice had that edge it got when she was lying. "It'll be fun. Like old times. Old times." When we were dating, Brad had made it clear he thought his sister could do better. He'd never said it directly. Brad was too smart for that, but the message came through in 1,000 small ways. The way he'd slap my shoulder just a little too hard. The comments about real men and providing for family. The jokes about my height, my job, my car, delivered with a grin that said he was just kidding around. "Where's he going to sleep?" I asked. "The guest room, obviously. The guest room that shared a wall with our bedroom. Perfect." "I should get going," Marissa said, grabbing her designer purse. "Don't wait up tonight." "Kendra's having people over after dinner." She kissed my cheek, the kind of perfunctory peck married couples exchange when they're going through the motions, and headed for the garage. A minute later, I heard her Mercedes start up and pull away. I stood in our granite and stainless steel kitchen, looking out at our perfectly manicured backyard. and wondered when exactly my life had become a cautionary tale about suburban mediocrity. Somewhere between losing my job and gaining a mortgage, I'd stopped being the hero of my own story and become a supporting character in someone else's. My phone buzzed again. Pete. Meet at Murphy's in an hour. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this. Murphy's Diner was the kind of place that didn't exist in Sycamore Heights. Linoleum floors, vinyl booths, and coffee that could strip paint. It was also the only restaurant within 10 miles where you wouldn't run into someone from the neighborhood, which made it perfect for conversations you didn't want overheard. Pete was already there when I arrived, hunched over a laptop in the back booth. At 42, he looked like the stereotype of an IT guy, thinning hair, thick glasses, and a collection of comic book t-shirts that would have been cool in high school. But Pete was also the smartest person I knew, and one of the few people who remembered that I used to have a brain. "You look terrible," he said by way of greeting. "Thanks. You said you had gossip?" Pete glanced around the nearly empty diner, then leaned forward. "I was doing some network maintenance for the HOA last night. You know how they upgraded all the security cameras?" I nodded. The Sycamore Heights Homeowners Association had installed a state-of-the-art surveillance system 6 months ago, ostensibly to prevent package theft, but really to give the busybodies more ammunition for their petty feuds. Well, the system backs up to a cloud server, and sometimes the facial recognition software flags unusual activity patterns. Pete pulled up a video file on his laptop. Like the same car visiting the same house multiple times when the primary residents aren't home. The screen showed a familiar black Jeep Wrangler parked in my driveway. The timestamp read, "Last Tuesday, 2:17 p.m., right in the middle of my shift at work." "That's Brad's car," I said. I figured. The system flagged it because it's been there 14 times in the past month, always during weekday afternoons. Pete scrolled through more timestamps. "Always when your wife's Mercedes is home but your Honda isn't." I stared at the screen, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Maybe he was visiting early, checking out the area before his move. Maybe. Pete didn't sound convinced. Or maybe your brother-in-law has been getting a head start on his temporary living arrangements. The coffee in my mouth suddenly tasted like ash. "You think he's been staying at my house? I think you should pay more attention to what happens when you're at work." Pete closed the laptop. "Look, I could be wrong. Maybe they're planning a surprise party. Maybe he's helping with home renovations. But Dave, when was the last time your wife mentioned these visits?" Never. Marissa had never mentioned Brad being in town, never said anything about him stopping by, which meant either she'd forgotten to mention her brother visiting multiple times over the past month, unlikely for someone who documented her breakfast on social media, or she was deliberately keeping it from me. "I need to get home," I said, standing up. "Dave, wait." Pete grabbed my arm. "Don't do anything stupid. If something's going on, you need to be smart about it." "Smart about what?" "About protecting yourself. If your marriage is falling apart, you need evidence, not accusations. You need leverage, not confrontation." I wanted to tell Pete he was wrong, that Marissa might be self-absorbed and materialistic, but she wasn't a cheater. I wanted to believe that my wife of 16 years, the mother of my daughter, wouldn't betray me with her own brother. But as I drove home through the pristine streets of Sycamore Heights, past the perfect lawns and perfect houses hiding their perfect secrets, I couldn't shake the feeling that my perfect life was about to get very imperfect indeed. I spent the rest of the afternoon doing something I'd never done before, investigating my own life. While Zoe was at soccer practice and Marissa was presumably getting her chakras aligned or whatever happened at expensive spas, I went through our house like a detective. The guest room looked lived in. The bed was made, but there were subtle signs someone had been using it. A slight depression in the mattress, a water glass on the nightstand, men's deodorant in the attached bathroom that definitely wasn't mine. The brand was expensive, the kind Brad would use, the kind I couldn't afford. I checked the laundry hamper. Mixed in with Marissa's yoga clothes and my work uniforms were items that didn't belong to either of us. A black t-shirt, size XL, that smelled like unfamiliar cologne. A pair of boxer briefs that weren't mine. My hands were shaking as I photographed everything with my phone. Pete was right. I needed evidence, not emotions. The kitchen yielded more clues. Our refrigerator was stocked with protein shakes and energy drinks that neither Marissa nor I consumed. The trash can contained takeout containers from restaurants I'd never heard of, expensive places that delivered to our zip code. The credit card bills would tell the story, but Marissa handled all our finances. Another red flag I'd been too trusting to notice. When Zoe got home from practice, grass-stained and exhausted, she found me sitting at the kitchen island staring at my phone. "You look weird, Dad. Like weirder than usual." At 15, Zoe had inherited her mother's looks and, thankfully, my sense of humor. She was the one person in our family who still seemed to enjoy my company, probably because I was the only one who didn't lecture her about college prep and social media presence. "Just thinking about work stuff," I said. "How was practice?" "Coach Martinez says I might make varsity next year if I keep improving." She grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, then paused. "Hey, why is there so much gross protein stuff in here?" "Mom doesn't drink this crap." "What do you mean? All these shakes and energy drinks, they've been showing up for weeks. I figured you were going through some kind of midlife crisis fitness phase, but you still look like a scarecrow, so..." Out of the mouths of babes. "I haven't been buying protein shakes." "Then who has..." Zoe's expression shifted from casual curiosity to concern. "Dad, is everything okay?" I looked at my daughter, smart, perceptive, loyal, and realized she deserved better than being caught in the middle of whatever was happening to our family. But I also couldn't lie to her. Zoe had always been able to see through adult bullshit better than most adults. "I'm not sure," I said honestly, "but I'm trying to figure it out." She studied my face for a long moment. "Does this have to do with Uncle Brad moving in?" "You know about that?" "Mom mentioned it last week. She seemed, I don't know, excited, which was weird because she usually complains about your family when they visit. Brad was Marissa's brother, not mine, but I didn't correct her. More interesting was the timeline. Marissa had told Zoe about Brad's move a week ago, but had only mentioned it to me this morning. Another lie by omission. "What do you think about your uncle?" I asked. Zoe wrinkled her nose. "He's okay, I guess. Kind of loud. He always talks about business and working out and stuff, and he calls me kiddo even though I've asked him not to." She paused. "Why? Just curious?" My phone buzzed. A text from Marissa. "Running late. Don't wait for dinner. Brad's coming by around 8 to drop off some boxes." I showed the message to Zoe. "Looks like you'll get to see your uncle tonight." "Great," she said with all the enthusiasm of someone facing a root canal. "I'll be in my room doing homework." With headphones. Loud headphones. At exactly 8 o'clock, Brad's Jeep pulled into our driveway. I watched from the living room window as he got out, not bothering with boxes or luggage, and walked to our front door like he owned the place. He was wearing gym clothes that probably cost more than my monthly car payment, and his confidence radiated from 20 feet away. I opened the door before he could knock. "Dave!" Brad's voice boomed across the neighborhood. "Good to see you, brother." He pulled me into one of those aggressive man hugs that was more about establishing dominance than showing affection. Up close, he smelled like expensive cologne and protein powder. "Marissa said you were dropping off boxes," I said. "Change of plans? Thought we could hang out, catch up. It's been too long." It had been exactly 18 months since the last time I'd seen Brad at Marissa's birthday party. He'd spent the evening telling stories about his business success while making subtle digs about my career transition. I'd spent the evening drinking too much and wondering why my wife's family treated me like hired help. "Come on in," I said, because what else could I do? Brad walked into our living room like he was conducting an inspection. He picked up one of Marissa's magazines, flipped through it, set it down in a different spot. He examined our family photos on the mantel, lingering on the ones that included him. He was marking territory. "Nice place," he said. "Really nice." Marissa's done well for herself. The phrasing was deliberate, not "you've done well" or "you and Marissa have done well." Marissa had done well for herself, implying I'd had nothing to do with our success, which, to be fair, wasn't entirely wrong. Her influencer income paid for most of our lifestyle. But the way Brad said it made it clear he thought I was dead weight. "Can I get you something to drink?" I asked. "Actually, I think there might be some of my protein shakes in the fridge." I had Marissa stock up for my visits. His visits, plural, casual, like it was common knowledge that he'd been coming by regularly. I went to the kitchen and grabbed one of the expensive shakes I'd been wondering about. When I returned, Brad was sitting in my recliner, not on the couch, not in one of the other chairs, but in my specific seat, the one molded to my body after years of use. "So," he said, cracking open the shake, "Marissa tells me you're working security now." "That's right. Must be different from the newspaper business." "It is." Brad nodded thoughtfully, like my career change was a fascinating subject for academic study. "I remember when you were writing those investigative pieces. You were good at that. Really good. What was that story you won the award for?" He knew exactly what story he was referring to, a series I'd written about municipal corruption that had won a regional journalism award 5 years ago. It was the high point of my career, and Brad bringing it up now felt like twisting a knife. "That was a long time ago," I said. "Still, must be tough going from that to this." He gestured vaguely around our living room. "But hey, not everyone can be an entrepreneur. Someone's got to work the regular jobs, right?" The regular jobs, like what I did, was some kind of public service, keeping the ordinary world running while superior men like Brad built empires. "How's the gym business?" I asked, trying to change the subject. "Booming. I'm opening my 4th location next month. That's actually why I'm here. Marissa's been helping me scout properties. She's got great instincts for this stuff. Really great." The way he said it, with a slight emphasis on really, made my skin crawl. There was an intimacy in his tone that went beyond normal family relationships. "She never mentioned helping you with business stuff," I said. "Oh, you know Marissa. She doesn't like to brag." Brad smiled, and there was something predatory in it. "She's been incredibly supportive, really going above and beyond to help family." We sat in silence for a moment, the subtext hanging heavy between us. Brad knew that I knew something was wrong, and he wanted me to know that he didn't care. "Where is she tonight anyway?" he asked. "Out with friends." "Ah, right. Girls' night. She works so hard, she deserves to have fun." Another pause. "You know, Dave, I hope you appreciate what you have. A woman like Marissa, she has options. A lot of options." There it was, the threat, delivered with a smile and wrapped in concern for my well-being. Brad was telling me that my wife was too good for me, that she could do better, that I should be grateful for whatever scraps of attention she threw my way. "I think I hear Zoe calling," I lied. "I should go check on her." "Of course. Family first, right?" I went upstairs and knocked on Zoe's door. She was indeed wearing headphones, doing homework at her desk, but she pulled them off when she saw me. "Is he gone?" she whispered. "Not yet. He's creepy, Dad. The way he looks at Mom, it's gross. Even a 15-year-old could see what I'd been trying to deny." The way Brad looked at Marissa wasn't brotherly. It was possessive, hungry. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Like, at family gatherings and stuff. He stares at her when he thinks no one's looking, and she acts different around him, giggly and weird." Zoe made a face. "I thought it was just because they're siblings, but siblings don't act like that." "They don't. But men who are sleeping with their best friend's wife do." When I went back downstairs, Brad was gone. No goodbye, no explanation. Just an empty protein shake bottle on my coffee table and the lingering smell of expensive cologne. I locked the front door and checked the security system, then sat in my violated recliner and tried to process what I'd learned. My brother-in-law was having an affair with my wife, in my house, while I was at work, and he was arrogant enough to threaten me about it to my face. The old Dave, the journalist, the investigator, would have started gathering evidence immediately, would have planned his next moves carefully, strategically. But this Dave, the security guard, the suburban dad, the man whose wife had options, this Dave just sat in his chair and wondered how long he'd been the biggest fool in Sycamore Heights. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. My supervisor, a decent guy named Rodriguez who'd hired me when no one else would, didn't ask questions. Maybe he could hear the desperation in my voice, or maybe he just figured I'd earned a mental health day. I needed to think, to plan, to figure out how to handle the situation without destroying my daughter's life in the process. But first, I needed more evidence. Pete arrived at 10 with coffee and a laptop bag full of surveillance equipment that was probably illegal for civilians to own. "You look like hell," he said, settling into the kitchen. "I feel like hell. Brad came by last night." "And?" I told Pete about the protein shakes, the used guest room, Brad's threats disguised as concern. Pete listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on his phone. "Okay," he said when I finished. "Here's what we're going to do. First, we set up some discreet monitoring. Nothing that violates wiretapping laws, just cameras in common areas of your own home. Second, we start documenting everything. Times, dates, conversations, expenses. Third, we figure out your endgame." "My endgame? What do you want, Dave? Do you want to save your marriage? Do you want a divorce? Do you want revenge? Because the strategy changes depending on your goal." I thought about it while Pete unpacked tiny wireless cameras designed to look like smoke detectors. What did I want? A year ago, I would have said I wanted to save my marriage. But that was before I realized my marriage might have been a lie for months or even years. "I want the truth," I said finally. "And I want them to face consequences for what they've done." "Revenge, then. Justice." Pete smiled grimly. In a situation like this, they're usually the same thing. We spent the next 2 hours installing cameras in the living room, kitchen, and hallway outside the guest room. Nothing in bedrooms or bathrooms. Pete was paranoid about legal issues, but enough coverage to document who was coming and going. "The system streams to a secure server," Pete explained. "You can access it from your phone, but more importantly, everything's automatically backed up with timestamps. If this goes to court, you'll have evidence that can't be disputed." Court. Divorce court, specifically. I hadn't wanted to think about it, but Pete was right. This was probably heading toward legal proceedings. "What about Zoe?" I asked. "What about her?" "Custody. If Marissa and I divorce, what happens to Zoe?" Pete's expression softened. "Dave, you're getting ahead of yourself. Let's gather information first, then worry about the nuclear options." After Pete left, I had the house to myself for the first time in months. Marissa was at some influencer networking event, Zoe was at school, and Brad was presumably running his gym empire. I used the time to go through our financial records. What I found was worse than I'd expected. Over the past 6 months, Marissa had been spending money like we'd won the lottery. Expensive dinners charged to our credit cards, always for 2 people, always at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel rooms in our own city. Why would someone need a hotel room 20 minutes from home unless they were meeting someone they couldn't bring home? The most damning evidence was a charge from 3 weeks ago, $2,400 at a jewelry store I'd never heard of. I called them. "Oh yes," the salesperson said when I described the purchase. "Beautiful piece." The gentleman said it was for someone very special. He was very specific about the engraving. "What did the engraving say?" "To my everything from your bear." Bear. Brad's nickname since high school, when he'd played football and thought he was tougher than he actually was. He'd bought my wife a $2,400 piece of jewelry and had it engraved with a pet name. I hung up and sat in my kitchen, staring at the credit card statement, feeling something shift inside me. This wasn't just an affair. This was a relationship. Brad wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was romancing her. With my money. My phone buzzed. A text from Marissa. Home late tonight. Don't wait up. I texted back, everything okay? Just busy, love you. Love you. 2 words that used to mean everything and now felt like salt in an open wound. I spent the afternoon researching divorce attorneys and private investigators. I wasn't ready to hire either, but I wanted to know my options. The consultations were sobering. Divorce was expensive, custody battles were brutal, and men in my financial situation rarely came out ahead. But there was another option, one that appealed to the journalist in me: public humiliation. Marissa's entire career was built on her image as the perfect suburban wife and mother. Her Instagram account, her brand partnerships, her networking events, all of it depended on maintaining the facade of having an ideal life. What would happen to that carefully constructed image if her followers discovered she was cheating on her husband with her own brother-in-law? And Brad's gym business relied heavily on his reputation as a family man and community leader. He sponsored local sports teams, hosted charity events, positioned himself as a role model. How would his customers react to learning he was betraying his sister's husband? I was still mulling over possibilities when Zoe got home from school. She found me in the kitchen, surrounded by financial documents and legal websites. "Dad, what's all this stuff?" "Just organizing our finances," I said, which was technically true. "Are we broke?" "No, sweetheart. We're fine." Zoe studied the papers on the table. At 15, she was old enough to recognize credit card statements and bank records. "This is about Mom and Uncle Brad, isn't it?" I looked at my daughter, smart, perceptive, already too wise for her age, and realized I couldn't protect her from the truth much longer. "What makes you say that?" "I'm not stupid, Dad." Mom's been acting weird for months. She's always on her phone, always going out, always talking about Uncle Brad's business. And you've been walking around like someone kicked your dog. Zoe sat down across from me. Are they having an affair? The question hung in the air between us. I could lie, try to maintain the illusion of family stability for a few more weeks or months, but Zoe deserved better than that. "I think so," I said quietly. She nodded like she'd been expecting that answer. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet." "Are you going to divorce her?" "Maybe." "Good," Zoe said firmly. "You deserve better than this, Dad. And I'm tired of pretending everything's normal when it's obviously not." That evening, I watched the live feed from our security cameras on my phone while pretending to read in the living room. At 9:47 p.m., Brad's Jeep pulled into our driveway. At 9:52 p.m., he let himself in through the back door. Apparently he had a key now, and went straight to the guest room. At 10:15 p.m., Marissa came home. I heard her car in the garage, heard her footsteps in the kitchen, heard the refrigerator open and close. Then, instead of coming to say hello or heading upstairs to our bedroom, I heard her footsteps going toward the guest room. The camera in the hallway captured everything. Marissa, still in her designer outfit from whatever event she'd attended, knocking softly on the guest room door. Brad opening it, pulling her inside, closing the door behind them. I sat in my living room, watching my marriage end in real time on a 3-inch phone screen, and felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Not heartbreak. I'd moved past that. Not anger. That would come later. What I felt was clarity. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what I had to do. Over the next week, I became a student of my own betrayal. Every morning after Marissa left for her meetings and Zoe went to school, I would review the previous night's surveillance footage and document new evidence of the affair. The pattern was consistent and brazen. Brad would arrive between 9:30 and 10 p.m., using his key to enter through the back door. Marissa would return home between 10 and 10:30, claiming she'd been at networking events, book clubs, or dinner with friends. Instead of coming upstairs to our bedroom, she'd go directly to the guest room. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. I started following Marissa during the day, using vacation time and sick days to track her movements. Her business lunches were actually romantic meals with Brad at expensive restaurants across town. Her spa days were afternoons at hotels where Brad would meet her in the parking garage. Her girls' nights were elaborate cover stories for dates with her brother-in-law. The most insulting part was how bad they were at deception. Marissa had never been particularly clever, but I'd given her credit for basic intelligence. Apparently, I'd been wrong about that too. On Thursday, I followed them to the Riverside Inn, a boutique hotel 40 minutes from our house. I watched Brad's Jeep pull into the parking lot at 2:15 p.m. Marissa's Mercedes arrived 10 minutes later. They met at the side entrance, kissed like teenagers, and disappeared inside. I waited in my Honda, feeling like a private investigator in a bad movie, until they emerged 3 hours later looking satisfied and disheveled. Marissa checked her reflection in her phone's camera while Brad adjusted his shirt. Then they got in their separate vehicles and drove away, probably to establish alibis for their respective evening activities. That night, Marissa came home with shopping bags from an expensive boutique and a story about spending the afternoon with her friend Kendra. "You should have seen the sale at Nordstrom," she said, showing me a dress that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. "Kendra went crazy. She bought like 6 outfits." I nodded and made appropriate sounds while mentally adding another lie to my growing documentation. Later, I would call Nordstrom and confirm that neither Marissa nor Kendra had made any purchases that day. The lies were getting easier to catalog but harder to stomach. Every false smile, every fabricated story, every casual deception felt like a small violence against our shared history. We'd been married for 16 years. We'd built a life together, raised a daughter together, survived job losses and family deaths, and all the ordinary struggles of middle-class existence. And she was throwing it all away for her brother-in-law. On Friday, Pete stopped by to check the surveillance equipment and review my evidence files. "This is good," he said, scrolling through timestamps and photographs. "Really good. You've got them cold. Now what? Now you decide what you want to do with it." I'd been thinking about that question all week. The old Dave would have confronted them directly, demanded explanations, tried to salvage something from the wreckage. But the old Dave had been naive enough to trust his wife in the first place. The new Dave, the one who'd spent a week documenting his own humiliation, wanted something different. "I want them to suffer," I said. "Not physically, but I want them to lose everything they care about. Their reputations, their social status, their business relationships. I want them to feel what I've been feeling." Pete nodded approvingly. "Public humiliation, it's poetic. Is it legal? As long as you stick to the truth and don't break any laws gathering evidence, yes. You can't wiretap their phones or hack their computers, but everything you've collected so far is admissible. Photos taken in public places, surveillance of your own home, financial records you have legal access to, it's all fair game." "What about Zoe? What about her?" "She's going to be caught in the middle of this. Her mother's reputation, her uncle's business, the whole family dynamic, it's all going to explode." Pete was quiet for a moment. "Dave, your daughter already knows what's happening. She's not stupid, and she's not blind. The question is whether you want her to see you as someone who fought back or someone who rolled over and took it." That evening, Zoe and I were in the kitchen making dinner when she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Dad, when are you going to do something about Mom and Uncle Brad?" I looked up from the pasta I was stirring. "What do you mean?" "I mean, how long are you going to pretend you don't know what's happening?" "Zoe, I'm not a little kid anymore." I can see what's going on. She was using her serious voice, the one that made her sound older than 15. "Mom's cheating on you. Uncle Brad's staying here like he owns the place, and you're walking around like a ghost." I turned off the burner and gave her my full attention. "How do you feel about all this?" "Angry, embarrassed, worried about you." She paused. "And kind of excited to see what you're going to do about it." "Excited?" "Dad, you used to be a journalist. You used to investigate corruption and expose bad people. You won awards for it." Zoe's eyes were bright with something that looked like pride. "I know you're gathering evidence. I've seen you with all those papers and files. So what's the plan?" I looked at my daughter, fierce, loyal, ready to go to war for her family, and realized she wasn't a victim in this situation. She was an ally. "I'm still working on it," I said. "Well, work faster. I'm tired of watching them treat you like garbage." That weekend, Marissa announced she was going to a wellness retreat in the mountains with Kendra and Lisa. She'd be gone from Friday evening until Sunday afternoon, giving her and Brad an entire weekend to play house in my home. "It's exactly what I need," she said, packing expensive workout clothes she'd never actually work out in. "Some time to center myself and reconnect with my goals." Her goals, right? "Sounds great," I said. "Zoe and I will hold down the fort. Brad might stop by to check on you guys. Make sure everything's okay." Of course he would. After Marissa left, I sat Zoe down for a serious conversation. "Your mom's going to be gone this weekend," I said, "and your uncle's probably going to be here a lot. I need you to stay upstairs as much as possible and let me handle whatever happens." "Are you going to confront him?" "I'm going to do what needs to be done." Zoe grinned, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in weeks. "Can I help?" "Absolutely not. This is adult business." "Dad, I'm 15, not 5. And I hate what they're doing to you." I looked at my daughter and saw myself at her age, angry, righteous, ready to fight for what was right. Maybe it was time to stop protecting her from the truth and start teaching her how to stand up for herself. "Okay," I said, "but we do this smart. No confrontations, no drama, just documentation. Can you handle that?" "I can handle that." "Good. Because this weekend we're going to get everything we need to end this once and for all." Brad arrived Friday night at 9:30, right on schedule. But instead of sneaking in through the back door, he walked up to the front entrance and rang the doorbell like a legitimate visitor. I opened the door to find him standing there with an overnight bag and a case of beer, grinning like we were old college buddies about to have a fun weekend. "Dave, heard Marissa was out of town. Thought you might want some company." The audacity was breathtaking. He was planning to spend the weekend in my house, probably in my bed, while maintaining the pretense that we were just two guys hanging out. "That's thoughtful of you," I said, stepping aside to let him in. "Zoe's upstairs doing homework." "Great kid. You should be proud." Brad made himself comfortable in my living room, cracking open a beer and turning on the TV like he lived there, which apparently he did. "So," he said, "what's the plan for tonight? Order some pizza, watch the game?" "Sounds perfect." I went to the kitchen and texted Pete. "He's here, recording everything." Pete texted back, "Don't do anything stupid. Let him hang himself." For the next 2 hours, I watched Brad make himself at home in my house. He raided my refrigerator, criticized my TV choices, and told me stories about his business success that were clearly designed to make me feel inadequate. He said during a commercial break, "I've been thinking about your situation." "My situation?" "The career thing. Security guard, night shifts. It's got to be tough on a marriage." Here it comes, I thought. Marissa's out there networking, building her brand, meeting successful people, and you're... He gestured vaguely at me. "Well, you're here." "Someone has to pay the bills." Sure. But Dave, between you and me, a woman like Marissa needs stimulation. Intellectual stimulation, professional stimulation. She needs to feel like she's growing, And you think she's not getting that at home?" Brad shrugged, the picture of innocent concern. "I'm just saying, maybe you should think about what she needs. What would make her happy?" What would make her happy? Like he was some kind of marriage counselor instead of the man who'd been screwing my wife for months. "What do you think would make her happy?" I asked. "Space, maybe. Freedom to explore her potential without feeling held back." "Held back by what?" "By expectations, by obligation, by..." Another meaningful pause. "By people who don't understand her ambitions." We were dancing around the real conversation, both of us knowing what he was really saying. Brad wanted me to give up, to step aside gracefully and let him have what he'd already taken. "That's interesting advice," I said, "coming from family." "Hey, I love my sister. I want what's best for her." "Your sister, right." At 11:30, Brad announced he was tired and headed upstairs to the guest room. I waited 20 minutes, then crept up to check on Zoe. She was in her bedroom with the door cracked, holding her phone. "Getting everything?" I whispered. She nodded and showed me her screen. She'd been recording audio of Brad's entire performance downstairs. "He's disgusting," she mouthed silently. I couldn't argue with that assessment. Saturday morning, Brad emerged from the guest room wearing only boxer shorts and a t-shirt, like he was the man of the house. He made himself breakfast using ingredients I'd bought, sat in my chair at the kitchen table, and read news on his phone while I made coffee. "Sleep well?" I asked. "Like a baby." "That's a comfortable bed." "I'll bet it is," I thought. "Listen," Brad said. "I'm going to run some errands this morning, check out a few potential gym locations. You mind if I use this as my base of operations for the weekend?" "Of course not. Make yourself at home." He left around 10 a.m. and I immediately called Pete. "I need you to come over," I said. "It's time for phase 2. Pete arrived 30 minutes later with a toolkit that looked like it belonged to a CIA operative. While Zoe kept watch from her bedroom window, we went through the guest room methodically. Brad's overnight bag contained a treasure trove of evidence. Love letters from Marissa, printed copies of text message exchanges, and, most damning of all, a small jewelry box containing a diamond necklace that matched the $2,400 credit card charge I'd discovered. "Look at this," Pete said, holding up a folded piece of paper. "It's a lease agreement for an apartment across town. Both their names are on it." I read over his shoulder. Brad and Marissa had signed a year-long lease for a luxury apartment, with move-in scheduled for the following month. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning a life together. "There's more," Pete said, pulling out a manila folder. "Business documents. Looks like they're planning to open a gym together. Hewitt Fitness and Wellness, with Marissa listed as marketing director." The betrayal was complete. They weren't just sleeping together, they were building a future together. With my money, in my house, while I worked night shifts to pay for their dreams. "Dad?" Zoe appeared in the doorway. "Uncle Brad just pulled into the driveway." We quickly photographed everything and put it back exactly as we'd found it. By the time Brad walked through the front door, we were innocently watching TV in the living room. "How are the gym locations?" I asked. "Promising. Really promising." Brad was practically glowing with excitement. "I think I found the perfect spot. Great visibility, plenty of parking, close to the affluent neighborhoods." "That's wonderful." "I'm sure Marissa will be excited to hear about it." Something flickered across Brad's face. Surprise, maybe, or concern that I knew more than I was letting on. "Yeah, she's been really supportive of the expansion plans. She's always been good at supporting family." We spent Saturday afternoon in a strange dance of pretense and subtext. Brad acted like the concerned brother-in-law, offering unsolicited advice about my career and marriage. I played the grateful recipient of his wisdom, all while documenting every lie and insult. That evening, Brad suggested we order dinner from an expensive steakhouse. "My treat," he said. "Consider it a thank you for letting me crash here." "That's very generous." "Hey, family takes care of family, right?" He paid with a credit card I didn't recognize, probably one he shared with Marissa, funded by her influencer income, which was ultimately funded by the lifestyle I helped provide. After dinner, Brad started drinking heavily. The beer gave way to whiskey, and with alcohol came honesty. "You know, Dave," he said, settling back in my recliner, "I've always admired what you and Marissa have built here." "Thank you. This house, this neighborhood, this whole lifestyle, it's impressive. Really impressive. We've been fortunate. Marissa's done well for herself." "Really well." He took another drink. "She deserves nice things. She deserves to be appreciated." "I appreciate her. Do you?" Brad's eyes were glassy but focused. "Because sometimes I wonder if you really understand what you have. What you could lose." There it was again, the threat disguised as concern. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Marissa's a special woman. Beautiful, ambitious, connected. She could have her pick of men. Good thing she chose me." Brad laughed, but there was no humor in it. Did she, though? Or did she just settle for what was available at the time? I felt Zoe tense beside me on the couch. She was recording everything on her phone, getting it all for posterity. "That's an interesting question," I said. "I'm just saying, maybe you shouldn't take anything for granted. Maybe you should think about whether you're really the best thing for her." "And what would be the best thing for her?" Brad smiled, and in that moment, I saw exactly what kind of man he really was. Not just an adulterer, but a predator. Someone who took what he wanted and convinced himself he was doing everyone a favor. Someone who understands her potential. Someone who can match her ambition. Someone who's not. He gestured at me dismissively. Someone who's not stuck in the past. Someone like you? The question hung in the air between us. Brad's smile widened. Someone like me, and there it was. The confession I'd been waiting for, recorded on my daughter's phone, witnessed by the two people who mattered most. Brad Hewitt had just admitted to seducing my wife, and he was proud of it. Now it was time to show him what pride cost.